welcome to another broadcast. Hope you are having a great finish of the week. And although it's not officially spring, it feels like it now. So happy spring from us. So today we're going to be talking about our book review. Hope you got a chance to read it. Another short and sweet one.
Yeah.
ROWE, which stands or why work sucks and how to fix it. Okay, and so this is by Cali, Ressler, and Jody, Thompson. It's kind of dated, but it still seems really almost like a new idea, maybe because it didn't catch on.
Well, and it does seem that way, especially because I think in the last year, a lot of
with
people
everything that's going
have
on.
worked from home, which will make sense as we get into
Right. So
conversation.
ROWE, the ROWE, stands for Results Only Work Environment. And so we're going to go over exactly what that means and what so. But it is interesting because I think when they started it, it was results oriented, right? And I think they figured through it that wasn't good enough. We need to switch all the way to results only. And even as I've started to think about the idea, and when I first heard of it through like my professional discussions board, I kept calling it results oriented. And then reading the book a couple times now, it's like kind of really ingrained in my head. Results only.
Well, when you said only, I was like, oh no, it's oriented. So I that's what I focus on too.
So, kind of bringing you up if you didn't get a chance to read the book with us, and hopefully maybe you will, because it's an interesting concept, it really talks about how as a society and how we live and work, everything's based on time. When you go to work, we work 40 hours a week, right? And, at some point that was a paradigm shift because people just used to work 7 days a week, and then religion tried to give them Sundays off, right? And then we got kids not to work, and there's labor laws, and got it down to 40, and now we're just kind of stuck on this 40 thing, and really what they are trying to get at is that for a lot of people, that is a very antiquated system, right?
Yeah, and we should add too that we're in the process of implementing this too. So it's not
we're going to try.
It's not just an audiobook for us. It's a manual at this point and
right.
kind of a guide on how to do things. But actually, that's absolutely right. I mean, and you think about your farmer, right? You have to be out there at particular times doing things. Oh, I guess you could be out in the dark, but that wouldn't be too easy. You'd lose a hand or something more often. But we now have the ability to implement this more than even 12 years ago, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, whenever this was written and implemented.
Right.
Things have changed and made it easier at this point.
And simply, what they're talking about is people should be judged on the results that they deliver based on the goals that are pre-agreed to, and not need to be treated like children.
Yeah.
Like if we don't watch every minute and micromanage them and their butt's not in a seat in the preordained office that they're supposed to be in, that they can't possibly be doing their job.
Yeah, and that's from a management point of view. Then you had coworkers as well, the mentality that coming in early is really what is successful, or
staying later.
Hours. And looking down on those that don't do the same thing. If you got somebody who's perpetually late, then they're a bad worker. No matter how effective they are in those hours that they're there. That's not often what's
happening. And that probably developed from a good thing of somebody that was really, or people that were really hard workers, putting in the extra time to really drive a business or a project, through the roof and over expectations. Yeah. And then it almost became like the norm that if you don't put in extra time, you're not as good or you're not doing as well. And so now there are a lot of people that are climbing the corporate ladder or succeed because they put their time in or they do the things that look like what they're doing, but they're not really being judged on their productivity a lot of times, and they might be the worst worker. And so it's like, what are we doing? Do we want results? Do we want to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish? Or do we need to be treating them like our kids that need to get up at a certain time and make their bed and be at the bus stop at this point and they got to do their homework at this time, or it's never going to get done, you know? And I think that for a lot of the professions in our country now is obsolete.
Yeah, and I wonder, going back to even as early as the 80s and before that, we didn't have, and that's when I'm thinking the 90s for sure, when we had computers, right, which called the internet, and then a lot more distractions and things like that. But I just wonder, thinking about the 50s, if somebody just came to their desk, it's like they don't have a lot to be distracted by.
Right.
Maybe that's why so many people smoked. Just because that was their
That was their
distraction.
break.
Well, let me get out of here. I got to go smoke. I can't. There's no internet, so I got to go do this.
The military still does that. And that's half the reason that I thought about that, like bringing this up and saying, hey, this seems like something that we should do, is because that was one of my biggest pet peeves about the military, is how much we were working based on some schedule. You know, you got to be at a PT at this time. We've got formation at this time. Here's the work we got to do, but you got to stay around until we have formation at 5:30. And so, like, half the time, we didn't have jack to do. And we had to sit around and do nothing.
Right.
You know?
Wait.
Yeah. Hurry up and wait, right? That is another one of the things from the military. But the irony is, I mean, there's a saying in the military all the time that they say work to standard, not to time. They say this all the time, and they never do it. Never. They say it. Like, it happens. It doesn't happen, you know? And so, you know, I was really thinking about, like, I'm in charge here now. And I hated that so much. Yeah, we're still pretty much 9 to 5 in it. And, you know, I mean, when you're a single owner or something, when you think about things and you're paying all the bills, sometimes I'm just like, so-and-so's not here, and I'm paying them.
Right.
And it's just like, yeah, but they're doing a good job. Who cares if they're later? They want to work later one day or come in earlier or put in some weekend hours and take off some weekdays. Like, why should I be caring about this if they're doing their job well?
Right.
You know? And
Which has to be somewhat tough, right? Especially if you're paying somebody by the hour. And then at that point, it's more like you have that mentality. If it's a salary, and things are getting done, it's not different. So I understand.
And it's still hard, too. Because even when I talk to my attorney about this and things, she's like, well, you got to be careful of non-exempt employees because if they put in more than 40 hours and you're not paying them, there's got to be overtime in this. And I'm just like, the whole legal system is antiquated. You know, if somebody wants to put in 10 weeks or 10 hours this week or take off this week and put in 60 next week, but they're doing their job, I don't care.
Right.
But I guess I have to because I can get sued.
Right.
You know?
We're going off on tangents I didn't
Right.
think about, but these are absolutely some of the concerns. So you're talking about exterior restrictions
Yeah.
on what makes this available to people, you know? And the other thing, too, is it's only available to like we said, we couldn't possibly do this, this book club that we're doing, if we were just on two separate schedules, right? So
Right.
as we said, if you have two people who have to communicate in a particular way, you probably have some restrictions, but that's fine,
Yeah.
right? You don't have 40 hours of restrictions in most cases.
And it's a paradigm shift. I find myself, so we've been thinking about this for a half a year, and we've been practicing, you know, in our reviews and making goals and making projects and then tracking performance, and people are basically earning their way into the ROWE, and we're practicing for when we just like totally flip into it and, you know, having an SOP. But it's like I'll think about different things that come up, and our brains are just so trained to time. It's like as I could see myself doing it sometimes. I'm like, stop it, you know. And so I think it is really challenging for just about anybody, unless you're a kid that grew up this way or you got your first job and that's like how they worked. Like, you're going to get trained different. But for the vast majority of us, it's going to take a lot of like almost like deprogramming to get used to it and to successfully implement. So, you know, we wanted to like go over a little bit about like who uses ROWE and who it might be good for and who might it not work as well for. And, you know, when I was really trying to look up all the companies that use ROWE, it's really difficult to find like who does. And I think one of the things that came out on an article that was in 2019, it's less than 2% of companies. I mean, obviously with the pandemic, there's more people doing flex or work from home or what's out. But you can go to the Culture RX, which is the company that, you know, Jody and Cali started after they implemented this for Best Buy way back in, was it 2005 when they did it? Yeah. And then Best Buy did it all the way until 2013. They did end ROWE though, but Best Buy was really well known for it. And of course, for more of their administrative and office staff, obviously they can't do that for the floor employees that are running the stores, or you walk and half the people won't be there. Right?
Be there when I'm there.
Yeah. So we kind of gave up on like just putting a list out of the people that are doing it just because it was really tough to find, and the ones that I did find, it's just like nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
I'm sure the employees appreciate working for them and what so, and hopefully they've gotten awesome productivity gains out of it and what so. But who it's good for, I think we started to mention.
And the other part about who it's not is when you have these big corporations and you have management change,
Mm-hmm.
it is, to a lot of people, it's just the latest thing. And if some management person who's high up doesn't believe in it, it's going to go away.
Right.
And so then you're introducing it and taking it away.
You gotta have leadership.
But truly, if you are independent in your job and what you're doing, who cares when you're doing it as long as you're getting done? As long as you're doing what you need to.
Right.
And projects and goals are being hit.
Right.
And completed. That's what matters.
And that's again another one of those paradigm changes that really challenges your preconceived notions, because in terms of thinking about this and thinking about all the different people's jobs and everything, I'm like, whoa, how's this going to work on a row? How are we going to trust people? Or and one of the things is really thinking about how to have goals and performance measures that both leadership and worker agree to, and then the ability to like have it built out as like a project and know what the performance steps are to completion, and then a good performance measure and feedback system, because people still need mentoring and training and
Right.
et cetera. You're just going to have to change how you do it. And so I would say the people that it would be difficult for are places where it's really hard to quantify performance, or it would be really hard to measure. Even when you think about customer service, how often can you get feedback from, let's use Best Buy again, from a Best Buy and floor employee? They put these new little machines when you walk out the door that's like the smiley faces on them,
Mm-hmm.
But does that really match up to an individual person? It doesn't.
Right.
And how many people are willing to fill out surveys? Like almost nobody.
Right.
Unless you pay them or something.
And then those floor people have support within Best Buy, right? And so then those people who are support have to be ready and be able to help them and such. So obviously, there's a lot of folks that it's just not conducive. I know college kids now who are working in manufacturing, or warehouses. You have to, those jobs are not conducive to being able to do this.
I think what we'll probably do, which I think will be really interesting if you're tuning in and watching this, is maybe a year from now we'll come back and do a ROWE follow-up live broadcast to where we can talk about how our own implementation has worked, and what was good and what was bad.
I might not be here.
You'll be on vacation in the Alps.
I'll be working somewhere.
We'll make sure that that's a performance goal and we agree to it.
The other aspect I think now that makes it easier is when you do have to, almost everybody has to communicate with somebody in some capacity. But this last year, we have been in a position to be working virtually. We've been there. But our customers had not been, in many cases.
Right.
Now, I think a lot of
They've
them...
been trained more
They've
to
been
be okay
trained
with
more,
Zoom.
And it makes it easier
Microsoft
for us.
Teams, et cetera.
There's still some that can't, but that's fine. We can work those in our schedule and stuff. So I think for folks that want to take this a step further, it is easier today than it was
for sure
a year ago.
It would be hard 10 or 20 years ago, unless you were a big, rich company that could build your own stuff. Like now we use Slack for intercommunication, which is kind of a mixture between chat and email. That works really well for really communicating, even if people aren't in the same office or what's out. And then Asana is a software that we adopted to be able to build projects out into and visualize it. And that is one of the things I'm trying to train everybody on, is how to use Asana well. And not only, because one of the things that would be unsustainable for a smaller company like us is if I had to make everybody's projects, and keep up with them all the time. So one of the huge steps they're going to have to be is people are going to have to know when we say, here's the outcome that we want, how do I build a project to accomplish that, document it to where I have a higher probability of completing this and documenting it, because I may not see that other person very often, or whatever the case, and to coordinate resources and collaboration. So like that is a whole nother step that needs to be learned by a lot of people, that a lot of times would just work on things, and when they needed help they walk down the hall and ask somebody. Right. And that's probably not near as efficient in terms of like really planning out and then getting good at doing that and executing. So I'm kind of scared, but really excited about it too, because if I can get people to pick up that extra responsibility, and everybody's almost like their own little business of like, hey, this is what I got to do. This is how I'm going to do it. How I'm going to plan it out. How I know to collaborate and coordinate with other people. I don't think this is something that, except for project managers, a lot of even really talented, smart people are doing at their companies.
Right.
They just need work from someone else. I guess a big company too, you could just have managers whose whole job is to create stuff for other people.
Right.
But that just seems really inefficient to me.
Well, then they could have managers.
Yeah, that creates stuff for them. And then we have a puppet master.
They can continue on with that, right? That's you're actually a big company, so.
So, challenges to this. I think the main one that they bring up, which is a big keyword in the whole book, is sludge. Right?
Yeah.
And so I'll let you.
Well,
take
so my first thought is, whether or not you decide to do this, I think the first thing you need to do is kind of work on this, because it's about the attitudes in the gossip and the worrying of employees about other employees. And like you said, even from a management point of view, you're like, am I getting, sometimes managers get too bogged down with the time being put in on something as opposed to the effectiveness, which could be costing you good employees. That's what I think one of the big benefits of this is you could really attract people who have more of a flexible mindset. I mean, for instance, I've always been an early bird, and I don't know what that's like to not be an early bird, but I know mentally some people are just not that way. So it's easy for me to get to work and be here in the morning, and because I've already been up for several hours.
The older you are, the more that happens.
I
bet you weren't an early bird as a teenager.
I had a newspaper out for years, so I've always,
I'm
the exception, and I'm not that old.
I didn't ever like
it. But there are some people inherently who really struggle, like biologically, to do that. And so, but they're judged as being lazy and being slow, but they're just not, And so, the more we could accommodate people, the better employees I think you really have an opportunity. So I'm getting off tangent here, but I just think, sludge in itself to me is, it talks a lot about it through the book, but it's something you want to stop regardless. And they had, if you caught yourself doing, worrying about some other employee, you had to put a quarter in the jar and things like that, right? And so I just think regardless of what you do, that is something, the attitudes of people to not worry about other employees.
To be judging people and saying negative things about time-based mentality, So if somebody, gets in at 9:10 and they're supposed to be there at 9, but that person's working over 30 minutes or might be twice as productive as somebody else, people talk garbage about them around the water cooler or whatever, and that's really toxic. And that person might be really good, or there might be things going on in their life, and if you help them through that, or they were able to have the flexibility of their time, they would get through it better. And it's just really bad for your culture and for the productivity of everyone. And again, it's a lot of times it's not conducive to everyone being better at the company. So again, they could be a really good worker, but they have trouble getting up. Or they would rather take, work early, take the whole afternoon off when they get their kids off the bus, and then work from 10 until 12 because they're a night person. And if they're doing 2 times better than someone else, who cares?
Right.
So.
Well, a simple thing was, you see there's bad traffic, but you wanted to go in the office today. So just sit and do work at home for 2 hours.
A couple hours.
Let the traffic die down and you zip in the office, And the other thing you think about, Jonathan today, think about a single parent whose child becomes sick today. It just, the stress that it puts on people because you can't be at work, or you have to take a vacation day or day off or something like that. you know?
And like the old sexist stuff of like, if you're really committed, you wouldn't have kids,
Right.
you know, to climb in the corporate ladder or whatever the case. Or, you know, now even if you're pretty progressive and you give good benefits for maternity leave and stuff, I don't think that most people would just want to, if they like their job and they're doing good on, I don't think most people would want to be disconnected for 3 months.
Right.
But if I could just put in a couple, 3 hours every day when I wanted to, even though you may take off 2 or 3 weeks or whatever you need, like totally, but then just to stay connected and stuff, but just not overburden things.
Right.
You need more sleep or you need to take care of the baby. But you've got that choice, like in the row,
Yeah.
you know, versus either work or don't work,
Right.
you know, so, you know, the challenges, I think that was one of the big ones that they talk about is this is like a paradigm shifting cultural change, and sludge is the main, you know, nasty head thing that comes up all the time in terms of talking bad about people because they're not conforming to the traditional work schedule.
Right.
And it's really easy to gang up, and sometimes it's funny, the stuff that people will say. But it's not helping anything. You know, that's probably the biggest one. And then I think that the other challenges I already mentioned are things that are more difficult to track performance and mutually agree on to have actual KPIs, you know, the key performance indicators. Some people it's tough, you know.
Some positions.
Right.
Some.
You know, just answering the phone and greeting people that come in the door. I mean, like, yeah, we could just have something where somebody marked it down and put it in a computer system and
Yeah.
whatever. But really, if people are really happy, like every once in a while, I'm like, oh, Rich does I love talking to him on the phone, and he answers within one ring. Like, I hear that, and I know he's doing a good job. But that's difficult without really Big Brother and somebody to have like a metric in a computer
Right.
to judge that. You know?
But that's why you need
Yeah.
An employee like Rich too, and what's going to help you, right? I mean, because that's just how Rich sees client service and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So it matters, you know.
Yeah.
And the other thing too about turning this on, like you said, some positions, we're not just turning a switch here, right? I mean, we've done a lot of things that already have made this
And practicing.
easy for place.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying now, if you're going to do it, now is kind of the time to be thinking about these things. And every company is different, and how you do it is different. But
Yeah, and I you know, because like a lot of the things that they do is they're really hardcore about it. Like for the actual ROWE, like Jody's the Culture RX now still is like ROWE is not flexible work. It's not work from home. It's not, you know, this. And you know, I get it. You know, at a certain point, you got to embrace it and really give people freedom for it to really work. You know, but on some things too, like we're probably going to be a little bit hybridized. You know, when people are interns or when people first start here, you know, the first couple quarters, it's traditional.
Yeah.
It's a traditional work environment. You work a certain amount of hours. You come in, you need trained. And then once we build up and you can prove that, hey, I can build these projects, I can work them out, boom, I can do this, then you graduate. You're like a different job category of where it's like you are, you know, salaried ROWE at that point. You know?
I've known a couple of people who have started new jobs during COVID, and so it's been from home, and it hasn't been a pleasant experience for them, right? Because
even Jonathan's wife Erin had struggled with that.
Right. Yeah. And my neighbor Judy did initially, you know, because you don't, and that's why a good employee, a good worker, is going to want to be in the office probably at the beginning to make sure that they got a good understanding of things and to meet with their coworkers.
Yeah. To have a culture.
Right. And
of enjoying and appreciating what you do and having some community and what's so. But again, forced fun is not necessarily the answer either, right? So, you know, what are the benefits? Again, I think we've talked about a lot of these, but, you know, increased productivity, hopefully, if you do it well, lower turnover, because people aren't getting burned out, or it is very rare to have. So it's just like, whoa, yeah, there's a couple negative things about this, but man, working here has such awesome benefits. I'm not leaving.
Well, going from this to then, you know, going from somebody completely ROWE or a hybrid to somebody who says 9 to 5, you got to be here is going to be difficult for people who've done this.
For sure. And then increased health and well-being. I think that's pretty proven. I mean, obviously sitting inside of an office and not really being able to be outside, or sometimes not even being able to follow your circadian rhythms, like you said, which are sometimes different for different people, can cause stress, higher VOCs and carcinogens, and not getting enough sleep, and just being out in nature, which obviously that's how we evolved.
Right.
We need a certain amount of being outside and which this pandemic has probably hurt as well too. And then increased job satisfaction. I don't think anybody could argue if you were happier at work and wanted to work and felt like you were doing a good thing and people appreciated you, that the quality of what you do is going to come through.
Yeah.
For most people. You can't make blanket statements, but I would think for most people.
Yeah.
So, this was a long conversation. Me and Tony tangented a lot on it. But we do think this is an important subject. I think this is the future, and I think in some way, shape, or form, most companies could implement this and we could have a better society in general and still have the productivity, so.
And I would say about the book, I enjoyed the book, and you'd go read the book if this is something that's of interest.
It's an easy read.
It's an easy read, and you just segue in. You actually get the gist of what this is. If you watch this, you have the gist of it. And the book talks about examples and just, it talks about some problem solving, but for the most part,
right.
You can read it for a little bit and you'll get the gist of this.
Yep. So thanks for joining in today. Join the discussion. Love to hear what your thoughts are, or if you've implemented a ROWE or thinking about it. Obviously, as we continue to learn and implement our own, we'll continue to share and do a follow-up broadcast of this one a year from now and give you the update there. Next week, we're going to have our financial subject broadcast, which is going to be on pop investing. So talking about a lot of the things that are popular out there right now. It will probably be very entertaining because it's popular, right? Most of the time, things that are popular for a reason because people like them and it's enticing. But we're going to talk about the good and a lot of the pitfalls.
Does it make you a lot of money?
It
Just to jump on GameStop and
right now, I guess it is, but eventually that behavior could be very dangerous, and we'll talk about that. And then the week after that, on the 26th, we'll be off, and then the week after that, Tony will be here with talking about tracking your finances and why it's important. So that will be a good one, and he'll have some awesome practical examples and share some screen sharing tips and tricks that you can do to do that. So. So thanks so much for tuning in, joining and sharing part of your end of the week with us. We hope you get to enjoy some sunshine and better weather, get your vaccines, and get to be out there and start being social again. And we'll catch you next week.
And change your time this weekend.
Right, yep.
All right, have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody.